And a good starting point to kind of kick off the panel discussion would be, Robbins, if you could maybe give us a bit of a kind of insight into the rationale behind that pretty bearish production forecast for this year. So maybe you could start by doing that.
Well, I think everything is relative, so I don't think it's as bearish as you're making out. If you compare it to the drop from EMS, which was 30%, a 12 to 15% drop is not quite as bad. And again, it's more predictable recovery because the drop today is due to logistics and due to uncertainty. It's not due to disease and production issues. So there's really no production issues in the world today. The drops we see really, and there's still a lot of uncertainty. So farmers didn't know whether to stock aggressively. There was logistical problems in getting shrimp and out of the ponds and through processing plants, etc. And so there was confusion. There was also confusion as to what the consumption was going to be, whether consumption was going to be impacted and how that might impact price. So I think the drops we've seen is more from uncertainty and logistics, which, depending on how the course of this event continues, could recover very quickly, especially since we're not dealing with anything technical or any production issues. That said, many of the countries have done quite well. The drops that we've seen are really from minor logistical issues like in Vietnam or in Thailand or moderated in production. The big ones have been India and Ecuador, which had serious issues with COVID-19 and continue to have serious issues in India. And so that still remains to be somewhat of a black box. The Chinese numbers are always a black box. So 500,000 tons is as much a guess with a plus or minus 20% as you can have, because it's very difficult to have a number that is totally in line with any reason from China. And the rest of the countries, again, I think kind of a 10 to 15% drop is to be expected. But I see a recovery as soon as consumption and movements of logistics are out of the way, because again, none of this has been from production issues. There are no production issues in terms of what historically has caused shrimp declines, disease.
So do you think that potentially there could be, obviously you revise those numbers as the year goes on. Do you think it could be that there's almost parity at the end of the year, possibly, just depending on what happens with COVID? Or are you pretty sure there is going to be some sort of a drop this year?
I don't think we're going to get to parity. Again, the stocking that's going on now will take us into an October-November harvest, and it's good, but it's not at record levels. And certainly, you still see issues in the big producers of Ecuador. Ecuador, the export numbers was down, but as it was made clear to me, Ecuador is starting to ship more to the United States, so it's headless. So on farm production is not as down as it would appear from the export, because maybe 20 to 30% of that's headless, whereas before it was heads on. So it's missing some weight that it normally would have. Ecuador is stocking lighter, but then they're going to compensate in biomass with larger shrimp.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I think that's the case in many of these places, but there's just uncertainty until there's more certainty about the end markets, about the consumption patterns, and a reshoveling. The farmers will continue to show constraints in terms of how they stock. So I don't see any huge surge at the end of the year, and depending on how the markets are looking, will depend on how the plans will be for 2021.